Hello, everyone. This is your host, Akil Jabbar, and welcome back to another episode of SaaS District. In today's episode, we'll be talking about how to leverage the 4 rules of smart budgeting to help grow your startup. Today, we have our guest, Jesse Mecham, joining us. Jesse is the founder, CEO, and best-selling author of You Need a Budget, which is not only an award-winning software and proven budgeting tool, but also an education company where they teach people a whole new way of thinking about their money so they make better financial decisions, get out of debt, and build the life they want. So welcome, Jesse. Glad to have you on our show today.
Thanks, Akil. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. For those of us who haven't seen what you've built, can you describe what is You Need a Budget platform and how it can help our audience with their personal or business finances?
Yeah. We started out as a spreadsheet way long ago, but we quickly pivoted from there, and we're now a web app, mobile apps. We're even on Alexa. You can ask Alexa how much you have left in your groceries category to spend, and she'll tell you. But we're really a methodology of how you should think about your money, and then we've wrapped software around that to just leverage all the power we get from technology to implement that method as smoothly and seamlessly and effectively as possible. So I see us first as an education company, but we pay the bills by selling software.
By turning into software. Makes sense. So you first developed the first stages of the business in 2004 while you're still, I think, studying your master's in accounting. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So you said you created a budgeting spreadsheet and you took that and made it to what it is. Can you share the story of how you decided take that spreadsheet, build it to the company at that time? What was the thought pattern and how you thought of building it?
Yeah. I mean, there was no vision here for sure. It was my wife and I were newly married and young, and we decided to have a baby fairly quickly. So we were going to be young parents as well. And we really just wanted Julie, my wife, to be able to stay home and just focus on this incoming baby. That was like number one for us. So I still had to finish my master's degree. I had 2 years left still. And I was working part-time trying to keep my grades up, but you just run into time constraints and brain constraints. And I thought, well, maybe I could sell this little budget spreadsheet that she and I had been using for the first year of our marriage. It had worked well for us. We've been able to save some money, not enough to not have this harebrained idea, but it had been working. And so I just kind of thought, well, hey, Julie, what if I sold this, just put it out there, and we really just needed to make like $350 a month. That would pay our rent. We had dirt cheap rent because we were in a really horrible apartment, but it was cheap. So that was it. It was like, if I can make $350, we're golden. I can get through school, become an accountant, and do all that. And so that's what we did. And the spreadsheet didn't really start selling until I realized we had a method that the spreadsheet was implementing. When I pivoted to start talking about the framework, the thinking behind it, the why, then people started buying a little spreadsheet. I mean, maybe it took me, 200 hours to develop something really nice and polished, but nothing compared to what you would do for just the most basic apps these days. So it was a way for me to get an MVP out there before that acronym had been invented, I think. But what happened was, about a year and a half in, we realized that we could probably fund actual software development. And so I had met a guy down in Austin, and he's like, hey, I can help improve your spreadsheet. And I said, well, no, let's build real software, So at that time, real software was a Windows-only desktop app, and that's exactly what we did. But that, one step after another, just iterating on that first MVP of just a spreadsheet that let us know we had a good idea because the thinking behind it was pretty good. And then from there, we were able to get the tech to kind of catch up.
Was it a blog at the time that you had as a platform? And did you already have an audience that you built up before you launched that spreadsheet to sell? Or was it,
no, it was flipped around.
Flipped around. So you had the spreadsheet. Yeah.
Yeah, I started with the spreadsheet, didn't even know that there was a word that was blog at the time. And then I realized, this is earlier days. So SEO was, I would say, easier back then. YouTube wasn't around, apps weren't around. And so WordPress was starting to be a little bit of a thing. And I remember taking our straight HTML pages and then moving them all to WordPress, where I thought, oh, this is kind of handy. And that's where I started seeing like, oh, the writing, the content, that can be a marketing engine for us. So we did quickly, I mean, within, I'd say a year and a half, I moved to where I was writing as my main form of marketing. And that's still to this day, we're focusing on content before anything else, really.
Makes sense. And I think your core kind of message, which you talk about, is your 4 rules of budgeting. Can you share what those 4 are, to our audience, what you recommend, and if that applies to business owners as well, or SaaS founders?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, out of the gate, the rules apply in business, personally, rich, poor, everything in between. They work. They just help you make better financial decisions. So the first rule is to give every dollar a job. What founders especially would need to realize is if you're saying you want to use your money here, you're by definition saying you won't use it over there. And sometimes we don't like to be presented with trade-offs. We just want to say, well, I want that and that and that. And, it's like a Thanksgiving dinner. Like after a while, you have to start being picky and focus on the things you really want. You just can't have it all. And in money, we just pretend that there aren't these trade-offs. And so what this framework is doing is essentially saying, give money here to this job. And by definition, you can't over here. And that helps to flesh out the founder's priorities personally or in business. If we were just to talk about business for a moment, it would just be recognizing, okay, here's where we need to go all in. And it gives you this focus, like, is this the priority? Is this what this cash really needs to be used for? When you have what you pretend to be infinite funds where you aren't making those trade-offs, then the real priorities never really get surfaced. You kind of think you can just do all these things and then none of them really work very well. So that's rule 1. The other rules are just functions of that rule. So rule 2 is essentially to look ahead to larger, less frequent expenses and then break them up into monthly amounts, monthly bills. So if you have, we renew with some big SaaS product, I'm sure just the other day, and it's an annual contract. We save money going annual, but it's something that I want to make sure we have money sitting there for when it comes. People do this with the holiday spending. They do this with vacations, provided we could go on vacations, things like that, So what this does is when you're then presented with rule 1 again, where you're giving every dollar a job, you are saying, well, do I want to buy this thing now, or do I want to set this money aside for that future thing later? On a personal example would be, your buddies say, hey, you want to go for this, like go out to sushi or something. You could say, well, how much is in my checking account? And then say, okay, I'll go, which is horrible. Or you could say, well, I'll add some money to my restaurant category and I'll take it from my Christmas gift category. And now you're looking at like your 4-year-old daughter and you're saying, well, do you want to take away your daughter's gift? And I know it's extreme, but the idea is that you have these trade-offs that are always happening. And that's what we're trying to get people to do, is just be able to make these decisions with the best information they have possible. So you're never really probably trading off between going out to sushi or your daughter's gifts. But I like the example. So the third rule is that you can change your mind, and founders should be very comfortable with this. It's weird we have to make it a rule, but you learn something new and you change. You think, you do the best with the information you have on hand. And then when you get new information, you change. A coach does that. They come in there with a perfect game plan, doing their very best. And as soon as the ball's snapped, the ball's kicked, whatever it is, then they're immediately assessing new information and integrating that into their plan. And so with budgeting, people like to think, oh, well, I've said I'm only going to spend this much. So just, I'm only going, they just stick there rabidly. And what we're trying to say is, well, no, if you did the best you could with the information you had. Now that you have something else happening, change it around a little bit. It's your plan, do whatever you want. And finally, our last and final rule, and founders will appreciate this because you talk a lot about burn rate and how long can we go on this funding and things like that. We want individuals, businesses, especially at this time where you have businesses that are hanging on by a thread or couldn't hang on. We want people to be living on at least 30 days of money. So $1 you spend today, you would not have brought in yesterday. You would have brought it in 30, 45, 60 days before. So we talk about aging your money as the rule. We want them with the $1 you spend to be older, right? And all those things help you essentially, those 3 rules help you make better decisions. Well, the first 2, the third one is to change your mind so you can improve your decision. And the fourth one is to give you room to make those decisions where you aren't just right on the wire. When things get stressful and you get down to zero and you run out of time, decision quality can really suffer. So that fourth rule gives us room to breathe and think. So that's it in a nutshell. We have, all we talk about is those 4 rules in some form or fashion. We've been doing it for 16 years.
Makes sense. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about those maybe points 2 and 3, and then I want to ask you a follow-up question on that. So, for example, I'm a SaaS founder. I have $50,000, dedicated to budgeted for tech. Okay, that's my development team. I'm going to hire a developer, and then I have 50,000 say dedicated to marketing. Now, I think what you're saying is, okay, now we have a trade. That's how you're kind of balancing off your trade-off. You have $100,000. You're going to put it to work, 50K each, 50-50. That's what you decided to do. And then somebody comes to you and says, hey, I've got this, I can show you how we can get a cost per acquisition to LTV value, payback period of, let's get 10 to 1. But you're going to have to invest, another 50,000. Now you're like, okay, or say 30,000. So now I have to say, okay, am I going to take it away from my product and now focus it on marketing? Now you have to make that decision. Okay, so now you take 30K here, you put into marketing. Now you're putting 80K here for the next year. Now you're finding you're getting let's say the results are now double of what you expected. So you're saying rule number 3 is, okay, now you might have to find more money. Maybe you have to take, right? I think that's really, okay, maybe it's not 80K. Maybe I need to double this and put triple this, right? Because
absolutely,
why not be flexible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's important is you ran out of money. So running out of money made you have to come to the decision. A speaker that I listened to the other day, he said, awareness is the point of decision. So if we aren't aware of where the money is going, we don't make decisions. We're just reacting. I wouldn't call that a decision at all. But what you're saying is you get new information. You're seeing that the resources are finite, and finite resources are a boon to a founder. It makes them creative. It makes them hustle. There's some stress there for sure, but solutions are squeezed out of scarcity. I love the idea of short runways. I love the idea of personal money because it's higher stakes. I like all of that forces people to be squeezed into where they're like, okay, it's sink or swim situation. I think really good things come out of that stuff.
So a lot of constraints pressed onto you. How long so you said short term. So now if I'm trying to plan for my 100K budget, do you suggest, 1 year in advance? Some people say 5-year plan, or is that kind of a waste of time?
I think 5 years, man, like you and I, we could sit here, we could record what we think will happen in 5 years, and then we'll watch it in 5 years and we'll just laugh hysterically, right?
That's true.
I'm no futurist. I love reading that stuff because it's highly entertaining. But I think a year out, you're solid, I'll tell you this, more often than not, we always will make an annual budget, an annual plan, think through. You gotta, as the business gets larger, the ship is a little tougher to turn on a dime, right? So you need to be thinking a little further out. But more often than not, around June, we're making not immaterial changes to that plan. So we lasted 6 months. As it relates to org charts specifically and like where people should be and how that should look, I always just tell the team, any org chart decision you make, the bar to clear is this decision good enough for 6 months out? Because if you try to think, well, in 3 years, you'll never decide how to put anyone anywhere. But if the bar is 6 months and then everyone kind of recognizes, okay, we're making a change and it has to last at least 6 months, we're good. It keeps you moving. So I like that short-term horizon because anyone that thinks they know longer than, 3-4 years, boy, I'd want to meet them and have them on my board, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So. I like that 6 month range. That sounds like a perfect number. How do you differentiate your product from some of the other tools out there? Right, you have Mint, you have Personal Capital. They offer free services, investment checkups, and analyzer tools. Obviously, you have some more features around it. I'd love to hear a little bit more about them.
Yeah. One part is we're just rabidly focused on the one thing. We just want you to be able to make better financial decisions in the moment instead of looking at your checking account balance and saying, can I afford this? Which is a stressful question for people and couples to answer simultaneously, sometimes when they're, evaluating different decisions. But the idea of deciding what you can spend based on how much is in your checking account balance doesn't work. And so the first thing we do is just build that awareness around the actual uses for that pile of money in the checking account. What should it really be used for? Mint is more of and Mint is okay. And so is Personal Capital in the sense that you can get kind of a holistic view. like a
Hmm.
snapshot, a moment in time, it does great. But they're not forward looking, like intentional tools where you're saying, I intend to do this, I intend to do that. I mean, Mint, a lot of the time, it's more of a look back and kind of say, well, we spent, I mean, how many times, if you've used Mint, and I've obviously, like, for competitive reasons, I poked around there years and years ago when they launched, but
Hmm.
how, like, who hasn't had the experience where you log into Mint and you're like, oh, I shouldn't eat out so much, It's like, well, it's too late. The money's gone, If you
Yeah,
do that again the next month, oh, I shouldn't have eaten out that much. It's like, well, when are we going to start changing behavior? So we're focused on changing people's behavior. And one other side note, the idea of Mint or personal capital being free they don't require the consumer to pay for them. But I wouldn't necessarily, if I was being stingy with the word free, I don't think I would use free. I think they're monetized in a different
of
way.
course. Of course, they always are. Yeah, whether your information, your data, or they'll upsell you at some point, right? So
Yeah, and
yeah,
I find it. I'm very comforted by the fact that when someone gives me $84 to use my software for a year, that they know that that's the end. Like, we don't make affiliate fees, we don't have any kind of ads, we don't market data. It's like the only top line revenue, the only dime that flows through into that top line is from every one of our customers giving us money directly.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to that part a little bit. So I'm assuming you said you did start off as kind of a finance blog. You focused on content, SEO, and PR. I'm assuming to grow your traffic a little bit. And then you decided to build a actual product where I see a lot of other personal finance blogs, and many that we've invested in as well. Focused on affiliate marketing, maybe some paid course consulting, or some ad space, which you guys don't, try to avoid. What was your thought process at the time when you decided to develop the software instead of monetizing the other way? Or was it just, that person in Austin said, let's build this, and you thought it was cool and you just kept running with it?
Yeah, I mean, I started product first, and then was just kind of like, okay, now how do I get the product out there? And
Mm-hmm.
content marketing was the solution. We went,
Mm-hmm.
we tried affiliate marketing, where people, we had affiliates, and then I affiliated for a while with a few companies back in the day. I didn't like how, and this was before it was required to disclose, I make money from affiliates. I didn't like that I had to tell the readers of the blog, like, hey, we would recommend them even if they didn't pay us, or I just didn't like it. I didn't like the caveat always kind of hanging over our heads. So probably, I don't know, it was a while, I'd say 6-7 years in, I just pulled the plug. I said, we aren't going to try and make any other money any other way. And we're just going to focus here. And I feel like the product is better for it. You're stingier with your attention. And that, I think, gets you to focus correctly on problems and then get the right solutions. So we evolved. We weren't, it wasn't like some, I was this idealist, like, oh no, the only way we'll ever make money is this. I mean, back then, the idea of data harvesting and selling and repurposing and big data wasn't even a thing. And so no one was thinking about privacy in the way they are now. Over the years, I've evolved to recognize that I value my own, and I like that I can provide that for our customers as well. But it's been an evolution throughout.
Well, could you share what the current size of you need a budget as a business is right now, and what has worked well for you to grow the site, from the beginning, and what's working for you right now? Because I know the personal finance space, as you said, is right now super competitive, right? So
Yeah.
how do you guys stay kind of ahead?
I think staying on message has been important for us over the years. Like, we have these 4 rules and we stick to it, and we just become better and better at solving that job for our customers, of helping them make better financial decisions. And so we've really tried to not get distracted by all these other little shiny things that come at us.
Mm.
We're currently, as far as size of the company, we have, I think, 120 employees around there.
Wow.
We've never taken any investment money, which I'm proud of and happy to report. And again, that wasn't from like an ideology standpoint or anything. I've always enjoyed the fact that I could kind of steer the ship, and if it sinks, I want to know I did it, But
Mm.
so I've enjoyed being able to be my own boss in that regard. And I also feel like that has made us need to find ways to grow that are sustainable, and because you're only ever growing with profits. And so we can't grow too fast and overextend and get over our skis. but we also needed to recognize that we can't just, consume those profits. We have to actually like reinvest them in the business. But I feel like profits are the perfect speed with which you can grow your business, because it's organic, right? It's what you've generated, and it's about what you can handle from a strategy and decision standpoint. You created that profit, so you're probably well suited to decide where it should go. Where if someone were to hand me, $50 million, I'd be like, I don't know where to start. Other people do, and they're like they have that dialed in. They know how that goes. I have to get lots of advice from lots of people, because that I've never generated that much profit, so I wouldn't feel equipped to spend it effectively. So it's kind of a rule of thumb. I feel like organic profits are about the right rate of growth.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people love the idea of being handed a check of $50 million, but you teach personal finance all day long. Yeah, the level of responsibility to allocate and now how to make money from it is not that easy, right? I mean, that's what we do
And
all day long, right?
I think it makes people be not picky enough about where the money goes, and we know how that is. If I if I if I give one of my kids $10, they're just like tight-fisted about it. I give them 100, and that first 10 doesn't really mean much to them. And I think that happens to founders. I think through some discipline financially, through following our rules, through creating scarcity by giving every dollar a job, and taking from one means you have to add to another, or vice versa. I think that can create that scarcity so that the decisions can be improved. But a big pile of money in that way, I would find it personally very intimidating.
For sure, yeah. So as a SaaS founder, do you have any, do you see some common mistakes, or do you have any rule of thumbs for trying to budget your cash flow and while still growing your business? Obviously, you've done it well with your own company, but do you have any that you follow or you recommend?
One thing that we only ever budget money that we have on hand. So we don't, if the whole objective is to create scarcity so that your priorities are crystallized, one way to kill that scarcity, and I speak about scarcity only from a positive standpoint, is that you kill it by saying, well, we only have $100,000, but we're going to close this deal in 3 weeks. And it's just, it's so close. And that deal will be worth 25,000. So you start spending the 25. And that is the problem. Absolutely close the deal. Absolutely do whatever it takes to get it done. But do not spend that money. Do not budget that money. Don't have discussions about that money until you actually have gotten the check, right? That's rule one. We teach that on the personal side as well. They'll convince themselves out of scarcity. They aren't comfortable with running out of money. And so they'll be like, well, oh yeah, I will work some overtime and we'll do this, or I will close on this house, or I will close this sale. And they end up never getting comfortable with just running out and having to make tough decisions.
Makes
so
sense.
That's all we're trying to do, is just make it so people run out of money conceptually and force that decision making to happen. So I'd lead with that and see where it takes founders as far as advice goes. There's all kinds of advice. I steal it from books. I read a lot of books. Any good idea I find, I just take it from there and hopefully remember to give credit, where due. But
sure, yeah. I like that analogy. So I'm thinking of somebody who has or looking for a job, right? They're like, no, I'm interviewing at 5 different places. I've been to 5 interviews, and they're already spending their paychecks assuming they have the job. But until you're saying you get the job offer and you got your first paycheck, you can't really actually spend it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. So I want to talk a little bit about lessons of what you learned. So you've run this company for over the last 15 years. Equally, what's important is to focus on what you want to do, which you talked about in your lesson one, deciding A or B. But it's also saying no to something else, right? What are some mistakes you've made looking back, or projects that you should have said no to when growing the business that you could share with others and that can learn from it?
One that was pretty painful was we wanted to build a new version of the software, and I needed to hire an engineer. My current CTO, he was on a hiatus for about a year, and he was the first part of the time he was moonlighting. And he's like, hey, I got to step back from this. My life's crazy. And so he stepped back from the moonlighting. He was my sole engineer. So I thought, well, I got to find someone else. And I frankly just hired too quickly. It was like the need to have a body in a seat outweighed the quality, right? Outweighed the, like, I knew better, but I let the desire to have someone working on it outweigh the fact that I had some reservations about who I ended up going with. And, he built that, my next version of the software for probably, we were about 80 grand in. And then I actually ended up hiring my now CTO, bringing him on full time. And he took one look at it, and he's like, we got to scrap this. Like, this is going to ruin us. But
Wow.
everything about it was bad. And I had let it get away from me. I hadn't put my foot down where I should have. And I was getting run over by that guy. So, so we bagged, a year of my time and 80 grand in cash, and started from zero with our next version, which set us back quite a bit on our deadline, which leads to my next lesson. I will never, ever, ever again tell my customers when they can expect a new version. There's no upside to it. Zero. If you hit your date, then they're like, well, good, because that's what you said you would do. It's like you met minimum.
Exactly.
If you're 2 days early, they won't care. Yeah. But if you're a day late, it's pitchforks,
Yeah, makes sense.
Like, there's no upside. You only have downside. And we experienced that when we had to junk our entire, years of work. We still had that same deadline that I had foolishly given. It was horrible. So
what do you tell them when they ask, hey, when can we expect a deadline? What's your pitch?
I say, I don't give deadlines. At the end, we're hard at work, I don't give deadlines.
I like that. Just looking back at that moment, so your CTO quit. What would you have done differently? Like, now that you think about it, would you have, that's a key man in your company. Do you just leave it as is and just wait and ride out the pain of it until you find the right person, or do you assume more responsibility? Like, what would you have done differently? At least you had something moving, or trying to.
Yeah, I wouldn't begin work until the right person was there. Like, I mean, hiring the wrong, what if I'm really glad that I got the wrong person so that I could hire Taylor, my CTO, and he's the right guy still. So I'm glad how it worked out on the end, but looking back and only kind of in the context of losing that money and that years of work, or the year of work, I would have maybe taken another month or 2 or 3 to find the right person, and we would have been good. It never is faster to hire wrong, ever. And so you take as long as it takes till you get the right person. Also, don't, another bit is people tend to partner partner early, like marry early in this business sense. And it's like you and I, we know each other from this one interview, and then I see you at a coffee shop, and then we get to talking, and then suddenly you're like, hey, you should partner with. Like, it's this weird, like, low bar of marrying a business partner that we have. I don't know where that comes from. I think people are afraid to be by themselves and have their own idea fail, and they're looking for validation. And so these two partners can he and she can kind of like cross validate each other, keep each other motivated, and you're just not as lonely. And so you end up partnering because you don't want to be lonely, and that's a strange reason to partner. So I would just caution people to partner slowly. I do have, Taylor, my CTO, he owns part of the business, but he earned that over years of working. I mean, at that point, we knew we liked each other. We knew we wanted to get married for, in this business and yoke completely together. It's too tough to unwind that stuff and too expensive. So that's one other. I mean, I'm kind of off the rails a little bit, but that's one other piece of advice: is partner up slowly.
I agree. I think it's that excitement of, having a shared vision. Yeah, let's build this together, and
exactly.
Let's just 50-50, right off the bat. But I think we've made that mistake, or I have. At least I know, and at least 10 years ago, my first venture. So not again. And I agree. That's what now the same way is like, let's work together for 6 months, a year, and then we can talk about it. Okay, we'll see what kind of value bring. Do we see the long term? It's like dating for a year before. It's like before getting married, right? Yeah. So you've been running, like I said, this company now for about 15 years now. What's your goal? What's your vision to building out the company over the next 5+ years? Do you plan to sell it, or just keep running it forever and hand it to your kids?
Yeah. Oh, my kids. I have 7 kids, so I have wow. So many options, on who I could. It's like, which one of you? No.
Yeah.
Yeah. that's interesting. Thinking about it from a legacy standpoint
Mm,
is a totally different beast. I have no experience there at all, but
mm,
I've been answering this question for years, a decade. And
okay.
my answer's always stayed the same: is I don't, I'm not planning on selling it anytime soon. Um, I'm not, I would never say, oh, that's off the table. I think you just don't know. You just don't know
Hmm.
what'll happen.
Hmm.
But I sure enjoy running it, and I sure enjoy the team, and it's profitable. And so it's enjoyable to keep having that feed the family and feed these other 120 families. Um, and we're in it for the long haul. So we don't have these kind of misaligned goals. Like, our customers just want us to be around,
Hmm.
and we want to be around for our customers because it's profitable and enjoyable. And that seems to be a pretty good relationship. So at this juncture, yeah, I don't have any desire to sell. I could see myself backing off a little. I could see
Hmm.
myself diverting time, budgeting my time in that way a little bit differently in the
Hmm.
future. But I enjoy the work, and I don't work crazy hours. I finish up by 4 usually, and um, I get time in my wood shop almost every day. So yeah, life's good. I don't know if I'd want to change much, honestly.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you have 7 kids to take care of, right? I mean,
Yeah, I'm
spending as
so
long as you spend
busy.
time.
I don't even know
Yeah.
what's going on anyway. So
Yeah, yeah. It's probably like more of a break for a bit than anything, right? To get
yeah,
out
I'm
of the
like,
way.
honey, I'm going to work.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Exactly.
no, it's a full house, but it adds all kinds of richness to life. So I wouldn't trade it at all.
That's awesome. Final question from my end. So I get this a lot because I have young people who want to get into the investment space. They have 25,000, they have $50,000 saved. They worked as a in finance or an engineer. They've paid off all their personal debt. Maybe where are you investing your capital? What do you suggest to them at the moment?
Hmm, that's funny.
I know everybody has their own personal risk profile, but I just want to hear your.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll disclose my risk profile is very low.
Mm,
I don't take a lot of risk. My business is risky. Something could happen, and
mm,
there goes all that work and all that value. So I already
mm,
carry plenty of risk in my day-to-day work. So
mm,
when it comes to my investments outside of this, um, I like paid for real estate that you don't even have any money borrowed on it. It's super boring. I like bonds. I I yeah, my house is paid for, so I like that the shelter is mine. Um, I like stuff that doesn't oscillate a ton or fluctuate in value a lot,
mm,
because I recognize that I'm riding a risky train right here.
mm, mm,
I'm almost 40, so maybe I'm not supposed to be as conservative, or maybe that's a sign that I am. I don't know, but if here's one principle: if it's worrying you, if it's distracting you, if it's giving you like mental overhead,
mhm.
then you are over your risk threshold.
I agree.
So yeah.
I agree, and I think a lot of people like to day trade. Or I think even when Bitcoin was coming out, they were checking it every day.
Yeah.
I don't think I can handle that. It was just too much. It's just such a mind share taking like having to check it and what's going up, what's going down, and you can't control it.
Yeah.
And I think it was Wozniak, right? I think that's when he mentioned
Mhm.
something about that. I think you know the quote. Um, yeah. So, are you investing in other real estate? You say, or in buying them in cash, or is it just kind of your own property where you would
Just
invest?
my own, yeah, just my own,
Yeah.
like little,
Mm,
little rentals, little townhomes. Just,
yeah.
I mean, there aren't a lot of deals. I'm in Utah. There aren't a lot of deals here.
Mm,
So I've slowed down a lot, in
mm,
that. Well, it's already slow anyway. When you're paying in cash, you have to go slow, which I
mm,
think is, um, I say slow. I mean, I think it's a blessing, but it requires you to be just not get over your skis again. And
yeah.
I think it's a good rule of thumb. It's also completely like overhead wise. I just have I give no thought to it,
Exactly.
and
Mm,
I have a good property manager, and that there, because there is work there, but I have a good
yeah.
property manager, and he runs it, and keeps me up to date every other month on something, maybe. Um,
Perfect.
but yeah, when you aren't assuming more risk by borrowing,
Mm-hmm.
then you can be a lot more calm steady on how things are going. But I do own some Bitcoin, I should say, because a tiny little bit, because I just kind of thought, well, that would, like, if everyone agreed all at once in some weird way that we could never predict, like, oh, Bitcoin's a good value store, then it would be a good value store. The end, So there's a bit of me that's like, oh, I'd like to have a little bit of that. But like you said, I'm not sitting there every day like, has it gone up or down? It's just bought it and then you just let it sit.
Okay, so you had a little bit of a risk at that time of your appetite, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I would be totally comfortable losing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's just what you got to be clear with.
Exactly. So. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Jesse. This has been great. Where can our audience get in touch with you, learn more about improving their own budgeting and finances and whatnot?
Yeah, you can email me. It's jesse@ynab.com, ynab.com. I'm not on Twitter or anywhere. So, shoot me an email if you want to, have any questions, and I'm happy to discuss. And then anything that, that people have heard that's interesting as far as how we think you should think about money, youneedabudget.com. We do about 150 classes every week, all online. They are about 20 to 25 minutes long. Do one class. It's 20 minutes of like not a syllable out of place. Like every second of it is not a waste of time. You're in there, it's 20 minutes. It gets you right to what you need to know. And you kind of see how we think and then how that thinking is translated into the software. So it's time well spent if you want to, give the software a shot. Or you can just check out how we do things, and maybe that could translate into your own SaaS business. I think teaching sells, and we're really good at teaching. And so you look at what we're doing there, and maybe it would translate over to, to even enterprise sales and things like that.
Okay. Awesome, Jesse. I really appreciate that. And we'll put those show notes and those links in our show notes as well for their audience.
Okay. Thanks, Akil.
Thanks, Akil. I appreciate it. Thank you all for listening in to today's episode. Don't forget to join us for another episode where we interview top leaders and experts in the business and SaaS industry. If you enjoyed this episode, I ask that you please give us a 5-star review on iTunes. That would be really, really appreciated. Otherwise, if you have any feedback, suggestions, or improvements for this podcast, please feel free to send it directly to me on our website at horizoncapital.com. Or you can just tweet me at Akil Jabbar. Thanks again, and hope to see you guys on the next episode.